So look at Anthony Ryder from South Lyon, Michigan, recently selected as the Lions 2020 Fan of the Year. He has a passion about sports broadcasting.
With the 112th selection in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver, USC. One pride, baby! Yeah!
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Detroit Lions video. Now today we have some more news and rumors around the Detroit Lions as they continue to make offseason moves and as more news around the organization continues to unfold. So in today's video, we are going to be talking about the newest batch of news and rumors, everything from the recent re-signing players, re-signing rumors, and the fate of one of our biggest coaches this year. So if you are excited for that, if that sounds interesting to you, let's get right into it. Starting off with, of course, the most prevalent news of the re-signed players. Now, over the past 2 weeks, the Detroit Lions have re-signed two of their focal point players that they believe will have huge impacts on the future of this franchise, and two players that they believe will be here for a very long time and fill their particular role very effectively. Now, the first player that was signed about a week ago, that was signed to an extension, I should say, about a week ago, is the fullback Jason Cabinda. Now, Jason Cabinda is a young fullback, started his career at Penn State as a linebacker, started his NFL career as a linebacker with the Oakland Raiders, but after being cut by the Raiders and signed by Bob Quinn and the Detroit Lions, he decided to make the transition, and the coaching staff asked him to make the transition to fullback to preserve his NFL career. And in his couple years at fullback, he has played very well. In his two fullback seasons in Detroit, he has had a really big impact. And although fullback is, of course, not a focal point of any NFL offense anymore, Jason Cabinda, I would say, is a top 10, maybe top 5 fullback in the NFL when it comes to usage, when it comes to, ability, when it comes to, his statistics, which admittedly aren't anything incredible, but for a fullback, they're pretty good. And saying you're a top 5 fullback in the NFL isn't anything crazy. It doesn't really mean a lot to people right now, but having a top 5 at any position is really good. And Jason Cabinda, at the very worst, is a top 10 fullback in the NFL. He is just really good. He has a lot of energy, a lot of effort. He is one of the players with, I think, some of the most effort given and some of the most effort shown on the Detroit Lions over the past 2 seasons. Right, he is a very Dan Campbell-esque guy, changing positions to just preserve himself in the NFL. And due to his hard work and commitment, he earned himself a 2-year extension. Now, despite the statistical lackings of the fullback position, Jason Cabinda is a very big part of the offense. He is one of those guys that you go to on 4th and 1. He is one of those guys you go to on short yardage situations. He is one of those guys that you can kind of roll out and throw some short passes to. He's made some really impressive catches. He's made some really impressive runs. I think it was the Cleveland game. He had like a 13-yard run on 3rd and 1 to move the chains and really kind of shift momentum in that game a little bit. And just overall, his energy, his work ethic, and just his mentality, I think, is infectious in the locker room. I think Dan Campbell sees that effort, sees that energy, and sees that mindset that Cabinda has. And I think that's the big reason why they re-signed him, on top of course, him just being really good and one of the top players at his position and one of the more utilized players at his position. Now, Josh Woods, the 25-year-old linebacker and special teams ace for the Detroit Lions, was also re-signed to a short-term contract. I don't have the exact numbers for either of these contracts yet, as neither of those have been released, and I don't actually have the year. I couldn't find the specific year for the extension, right? I couldn't find whether it was a 1, 2, 3-year extension or even more than that, but I do know the Lions did officially re-sign the restricted free agent. Now, as I said, Josh Woods is a 25-year-old linebacker and really was a special teams ace for the Detroit Lions a season ago, but had 2 games where he was a defensive starter, where he started with the starting 11 defense. And in those 2 games, the only 2 games where he played more than half the defensive snaps for the Detroit Lions, and in 2 of the only 3 games where he played a single defensive snap for the Detroit Lions, in those 2 games where he played 50% or more of the defensive snaps, he totaled 21 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, and 2 quarterback hits. Now, he he did have some good coverage reps as well. Wasn't tested in coverage because he was really close to the wide receiver, really close to the tight end or running back. He had great coverage and wasn't tested. But, I mean, in his 2 starts, especially versus the Denver Broncos, and a little bit less so, but still very apparent versus the Minnesota Vikings, Josh Woods played 2 really good back-to-back games. Against the Denver Broncos, he saw 93% of the defensive snaps and put up 12 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, and a quarterback hit, as well as having some really good coverage reps on tape. I think he's going to be more of a special teams guy next year, but I also think he can be that next Jalen Reeves-Maybin, right? That special teams ace that is the captain of the special teams, that if you need him to step in for a starting linebacker role, he can do it, and you're not going to be at risk of having your linebacker play drop significantly. Now, I don't think he's going to be a starting linebacker next year, but I think he is, and I know that he is going to be a special teams ace. I know he's going to make a lot of big special teams plays, and I think you could see him in a very similar role to Jalen Reeves-Maybin if Jalen Reeves-Maybin isn't re-signed as that special teams ace that also has contributions to give to the starting defense. So Josh Woods was also re-signed. Those are the only 2 re-signings. We have a long way to go until free agency. I believe March 16th is the opening of free agency when all of these players officially become free agents. So the Lions have about a month. To re-sign the rest of their free agent class. But this, in my opinion, are 2 players that are a really, really good start. Cheap contracts, guys that are going to be kind of depth or less important positions, not spending the big money first, trying to get all your depth out of the way before spending big money. I like what Brad Holmes has done so far. I know it's a small sample size this offseason, but of the 2 re-signings he's made, I think both of them will be very impactful, and I think both of them are really good signings. Now, getting on to Tracy Walker, the rumor of today's video. Now, Tracy Walker is somebody that the Lions very much want to bring back. They think he's a top safety in the NFL. PFF graded him as a top 5 safety in the NFL a year ago, and based off of his stats, contributions, and role on the Detroit Lions, I would have to say he's right up there with some of the best safeties in the NFL. Last year, in 15 games, because he did miss 2 games to the COVID-19 virus, Tracy Walker totaled 108 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, a sack, 6 passes defended, and 1 interception, while only being targeted 26 times. So of those 26 targets, he had 6 passes defended, meaning there was only 20 footballs that could possibly be completed against him, and he had 1 interception, meaning there's only 19 passes that could have been completed. Not many of them were. I believe Tracy Walker only gave up 6 to 7 completions this year and forced a lot of incompletions, even if they're not passes defended, right? If he hit the guy and he dropped the ball, or if the guy just, dropped the ball because of Tracy Walker's presence behind him, one way or the other, Tracy Walker impacted a lot of the passes defended this year, had a lot of really good production. Again, even missing 2 games, broke that 100 tackle barrier, had an interception, 6 passes defended, a sack, couple tackles for loss. He was a really big impact player for the Lions a year ago, and they want to bring him back. You're going to have to likely pay Tracy Walker top 15 safety money, which is roughly $10 to $12 million a year. And although Tracy Walker may not be the most explosive or most statistically appealing safety in the NFL, you have to believe and you have to watch the tape to see just how impactful Tracy Walker is, because the stats aren't going to show you it, but Tracy Walker's role on this defense is arguably more impactful than anybody else in the team. So I think Tracy Walker will get re-signed, whether it's a franchise tag, which I think would be $13 million, which is a little bit on the higher end of that safety money, or whether it's on the lower end of that top 15, borderline top 10 safety money. Tracy Walker, I promise you, is worth every single penny. And based off of what Aubrey Pleasant is saying about Tracy Walker, and just, at the Senior Bowl was saying, he had this great season. He had kind of a bounce back year after a disappointing 2020. He had kind of this bounce back year after a disappointing 2020, but there's a lot of room to improve, and I'm excited to work with him and watch him get so much better next season. Makes it seem like they are very confident that Tracy Walker wants to return. They want to bring Tracy Walker back. Tracy Walker wants to return to Detroit for the team that drafted him. It's a deal that wants to be made by both sides, and all that's standing in the way right now is a few numbers and a couple of zeros. So Tracy Walker will likely be re-signed, and Aubrey Pleasant can't wait to work with him. And of course, that leads us right into our last piece of news for today, and that is the news that Aubrey Pleasant will officially be staying the defensive backs coach for the Detroit Lions. Yes, Aubrey Pleasant was up in the air for a while, for a couple of weeks back to back to back, as he interviewed for the Minnesota defensive coordinator job and didn't get it, and then interviewed for the New Orleans Saints defensive coordinator job, where it was reported he did a really good job and had a phenomenal vision for what he wanted the Saints defense to look like and what he wanted his defense to look like as the defensive coordinator. Now, although he interviewed very, very well, Aubrey Pleasant did not accept a defensive coordinator job for either of those two teams, and with the coaching hires largely being over at this point in the NFL offseason, Aubrey Pleasant is very, very likely returning to the Detroit Lions and is safe to be the defensive backs coach next year for Detroit. And Aubrey Pleasant is, I think, one of the more impactful coaches for this team, as the Lions last year saw a lot of injury in the secondary and a lot of injury specifically at the cornerback position, and Aubrey Pleasant can have a major role in the development of Jeff Okudah, Amani Oruwariye, Tracy Walker, Will Harris, Ifeatu Melifonwu, AJ Parker, Jerry Jacobs, and some other young defensive backs that the Lions will likely bring in this offseason, whether it's through free agency, the draft, or undrafted free agency. Aubrey Pleasant has been a huge coach this year. I mean, obviously, with all the injuries at defensive backs, he had Jeff Okudah playing well in the week one. You saw Amani Oruwariye have an all-pro caliber season. Saw Ifeatu make some serious strides. Had AJ Parker playing well. Had Jerry Jacobs playing well. Had Tracy Walker see arguably his best season in the NFL. Had Will Harris see probably his best season in the NFL. Aubrey Pleasant was huge in the development of our young secondary, and all of those guys, with the exception of Tracy Walker. So Amani, Okudah, Harris, Iffy, Parker, and Jacobs, all 6 of those guys are still on their rookie contracts, and all 6 of those guys are 3-year veterans or less. So they still have room to develop. They still have room to grow, and they're still playing out their rookie contracts, and Aubrey Pleasant can help each and every one of them reach their full potential with the Lions. So with that being said, Aubrey Pleasant is the Lions defensive backs coach, and I think you're going to see the Lions secondary be so much better for that news. So with all that being said, though, that's all I got for you guys today. Let me know what you guys think about this news and rumors. What do you think about the re-signings? What do you think about the Tracy Walker situation? And how do you feel about Aubrey Pleasant returning to Detroit? Let me know all that down in the comments below. But with all that being said, that is all I have for you guys today. Thank you all so very much for watching. And until next time, and as always, go Lions!